Welcome back, campers, to the latest episode of Ghost Storying. And yes, that's the name that was selected. Thank you all for your suggestion. I think campers goes well. After all, we're telling stories around our virtual campfire, or bonus points if you're actually watching this around the campfire. For those who don't know me, I'm Amy Shuford, psychic medium, and these ghost stories are based on my own experiences, what happened to me and how I interpreted it at the locations where they took place. This chapter, chapter 3, is all about Gettysburg. So a lot of things come to mind when you think of Gettysburg. We are standing here at the battlefield at Gettysburg. And this battle was fought in the Civil War here in the United States. It was a 3-day battle, and it was fought all around the city of Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. It is, I think, and my sister has 2 or 3 degrees in history, so she's probably going to cringe when she sees this. But I believe it is one of the battles that had the most casualties of the Civil War. And I'll say this, as a medium, my first inclination, and fear, I guess, is an appropriate word because I'm very squeamish. Okay, I don't like blood. I don't like my own blood, anybody else's. I am very good in emergency situations. But when people show me how they died, or I encounter spirits, I don't know how that's going to be. Am I going to see them like you and I? Am I going to see a video, so to speak, like in my brain? Am I going to smell it, hear it, all the things? And we'll just say, for the sake of kiddos, they didn't have anesthesia and those kind of things. That's as much as we're going to go into that. But it's just really not something I want to see. And this took place at, I think this was 2022. I had just started after COVID, returning and making appearances at festivals, doing readings. And I was really excited because this was the first one that I attended since COVID. And my family came because we all love history. We grew up traveling the United States and seeing historic sites. So my brother and sister came with me. Now, I will say also that when I do the work, I'm protected, which is awesome because I don't think I could go through some of these heavy duty things that you might find at a place like this and then go and do a full day of readings. That would just be mentally exhausting. But it's not about me, is it? So this is kind of probably different than a different direction than maybe you thought I was going to go. And it certainly was for me, because when we got to the battlefield, I asked my angels and guides, I didn't want to shut myself completely down. I just asked that I be open only for those people who really needed my help. I didn't want to just see things and see events and people there are basically like psychic imprints whenever you're somewhere that has seen so much, right? I didn't want to see any of that. I only asked if there was anybody who really needed my help to only let me encounter them, because I was there to do the work, but the realistic battle, that's not what I wanted to see. So I'm going to talk about 3 spirits that I encountered that day while we were touring the battlefields of Gettysburg. The first spirit was a spirit of a little girl, and it took place right here as we were going up this pathway. My sister was first, then my brother, and then I was, as one of my guides so politely put it, dilly-dallying. Well, he's very sassy. Folks, it was really hot. If you've been there in the summer, hot. It was over 100 degrees. I don't do well in heat. But we were walking up the pathway, and from out behind one of the trees, this little girl appeared and just smiled at me. She looked, 3, maybe 4 years old, and she had blonde hair and was wearing what was probably like, a day outfit or nightgown. It was like a little white dress, looked like cotton. I don't know what kind of material they wore then, but it looked like a simple day or night outfit. And she was so excited to see that, to realize that I could see her. And I don't know how they know, right? They just do. I guess it's the same way when you start to realize as a medium that somebody else can see spirits. It just is. So she was really excited, and she wanted to show me where she died. She actually had, I was going to say she had crossed over, but I just heard that no, she did that afterwards. So many of us, we know the stories about the soldiers, and we know a lot of stories, especially in an area like this, where it's historical and so many people come to visit. And there are famous stories that are told. And you can imagine like walking down these pathways, either with a guidebook or they probably have guided tours, and listening to the things that are told. And we forget, honestly, that in something this big, there were just normal folk. This battle, came through farmland. This is farmland. And the little town of Gettysburg, yes, it went through there, and we know a lot of the different stories. My sister could probably tell a whole bunch with her degrees in history, but I don't really remember hearing stories in school. I know it was a long time ago, right? And who knows what they teach today? I don't know. Tell me what you've heard in the comments, if there's any stories that you've heard about, when I say normal folk, outside of the regiment, okay? But she was just out doing what she was doing, playing, and got caught in the crossfire. She died instantly. But I think, just seeing and hearing all about, she just didn't want to be forgotten. As so many of these spirits we talked about before, they just want their stories told. And I did something that, I don't know, she just had so much joy in that moment in being able for somebody else to be able to recognize her and for her to tell her story. And she held my hand, and I literally put my hand down and, held her hand like this and was just swinging it as we walked up the hill. I thought, I don't care who's behind me. She's happy, and this is about the work. And she thought my brother was so funny. She was like, oh my gosh, he's silly. And I told him, I'm sure he has a big head, and now he's going to have even bigger head if he watches this. But she just got that pure little kid enjoyment that she had been missing. Although she's seen, and, there's a lot of kids that, kids are so close to the other side that if you've been through here or other places and your child talks to you about a little kid, acknowledge them. Just acknowledge them. Because they do see, right? A lot of them see, which is a whole nother story. But I won't ever forget that. She was so sweet, and it was something that I was so caught up in being worried of seeing soldiers and surgeries and, all these things that I didn't take in account that normal folk, as they quote it. So that is spirit number 1. Now, spirit number 2. Spirit number 2. So it was really hot. Did I mention that? It was hot. And we pulled along, well, as you go through, we did a driving tour because we had one day to tour and then needed to be back on the road. So we pulled over, and there were woods and rocks. It looked like there was shade, quite honestly. And we got out, and we're just kind of walking a little bit. My brother went and stayed in the car, and I just kept getting pulled down this little pathway. And I'm like, it just is bushes. But this woman wanted me to follow her. And I think I was in flip-flops. I was not dressed to go down a little dirt path or climb on rocks. And I got to an area and I saw this. And I knew I had to make it over to where that statue was. And I told my sister, and she's like, well, let's go. I said, there was a lady that wants me to go over there. And I'm going to show you the area from another angle here so that maybe you'll recognize it. Okay, so here's another angle, but it really, and again, I wasn't thinking of doing this when I was taking the pictures, but it actually looks down into like the valley. And it was really hard to get here. And it was all, you can see, it's like overgrown. And there was a woman who said, what about us? What about us? What about these people who gave their lives? It is a memorial, and as you can see, there's different writing on the side, people's names. It talks about a certain regimen, but it hasn't been upkept. And as I'm going through this, I'm thinking about now that I should have contacted the Park Service and asked them about this, because they wanted this area maintained. So if you've been to Gettysburg since 2022, the summer of 2022, I think I went in June, and can tell me whether this area has been maintained, I'd really like to know. Put a picture down in the comments. I'm going to try and find out myself. But if you know, please let me know, because that was something I didn't do. I was supposed to help them. She wanted them to be remembered. And like, people were going everywhere. But trust me, people were not coming down this way, because I thought, I am going to get bit by a snake or something. And I just had no clue that this was down here. If she hadn't have asked me to follow her, I would have never known. But it's very important that they get this maintained, that their people are honored and continue to be honored, and feel as though they have been. So, kind of telling on myself there, because I completely forgot. So we're going to have to look into that. The third spirit that I encountered was an elemental. And this isn't the actual place, the scene where it took place, because I didn't expect to be doing this, but it's one of my favorite pictures. It's a peaceful, reverent place, feeling that you get. But we were walking on one of the trails from the visitor center, and it went kind of by a wooded area, and then you cross the street to get to the place where I saw the little girl. But I felt this immense energy and saw they presented themselves as huge elemental. Their head rose just above the tree line. And the way they presented themselves to me, I was trying to think of what they kind of looked like. There's a book, I cannot think of its name to save my life, so that's not going to help. But they were a big, broad creature. And I felt very honored that they showed themselves to me. They are basically the guardian of the battlefield, which they consider sacred ground. And I don't know, I hear so many people have different experiences with elementals, but mine have just always been awesome. And this spirit does just that. He walks the land and energetically protects it. He's a guardian of souls. And that being all living creatures upon the land, the trees, the animals, insects. Sacred is just what I hear over and over again. I want to thank you guys from the bottom of my heart for subscribing, for your comments, your likes, the participation, for sharing. Thank you so much. It helps me to tell the stories, for the spirits to have their stories heard. And that is such a huge part of this work. So thank you. And I will see you around the virtual campfire next week for another chapter of ghost storying.